Hello again. I'm Sohaila Bana with West Contra Costa Fire Safe Council. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. I'm glad to have with us tonight Deputy Fire Marshal Munson and also California Insurance Commissioner's Public Relation Officer, Mary Beth Bykowsky. I may have paraphrased your title. I'm sorry. Would you like to introduce yourself and get us started, please? The topic is becoming FireWise, home hardening, and how it impacts our home insurance rate, home insurance policies. And after that, Deputy Fire Marshal Munson will talk about becoming FireWise. Please, Mary Beth. By the way, may I ask everyone to please mute yourself? If you don't, then I will have to mute you.
No.
Mary Beth, please. You can start now.
No.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Mary Beth Bykowsky, and I'm an analyst in the Community Relations and Outreach Branch of the Department of Insurance, also referred to as CDI. Tonight, I will give you a brief update on the nation's first wildfire safety regulation to help drive down the cost of insurance. So I would like to quickly point out the role of the insurance commissioner. He protects the consumers by ensuring a fair and competitive insurance market. He maintains insurance solvency through appropriate property and casualty rates. We set standards for agents and brokers, perform market conduct reviews, resolve consumer complaints, and investigate and prosecute insurance fraud. CDI enforces the insurance laws of California. It's essential to understand that any changes to the insurance code requires legislation. And lastly, unfortunately, CDI does not have the authority to force insurers to write coverage. When the current insurance commissioner, Ricardo Lara, was first elected commissioner, he traveled up and down the state. He met with as many groups as he possibly could to really get a feeling of what is going on within the state. And he quickly found out that wildfires was the #1 major problem throughout all of California, not just Northern California. So he worked with the state's emergency response and preparedness agencies, including CAL FIRE, Cal OES, to create a consistent list of actions that you can take to protect yourself from wildfires. At CDI, we call it the Safer from Wildfires 1, 2, 3 framework. Basically, we wanted all the state agencies to be telling you the same things, right? Just to be cohesive and make it clearer. So most importantly, the commissioner directed the insurance companies to provide discounts to consumers under the new framework with transparency about risk rating. The regulation was codified in October of 2022, and it requires the insurance companies to submit new rates that recognize the benefit of safety measures, such as upgraded roofs and windows, defensible space, and community-wide programs such as FireWise USA and the Fire Risk Reduction Community designation. So insurance companies have until April 12th, that's next week, to submit their new rates to CDI for approval. We have been urging communities and homeowners to take advantage of this time frame to harden their homes and communities. I'm going to skim over the mitigation requirements since we have the fire marshal with us tonight. He can go over that later. But step 1 is, excuse me, is to protect the structure. Step 2 is to protect the immediate surroundings. And step 3 of the Safer Wildfires Framework is an effort to obtain a community level mitigation designation. This is the most important and impactful step. This will most likely involve at least one, if not more, local government agencies like Fire Emergency Planning Department. A community should have a clearly defined boundary and a local risk assessment in consultation with the local fire district or state fire agency. An identified evacuation route, cleared of vegetative overgrowth, an evacuation plan contingencies, clear funding sources, and integrated and up-to-date local plan and documents. We do not yet know what these new discounts will look like until the insurance companies submit the new rates to CDI for approval. And unfortunately, I really can't give you a good time frame of how and when these new rates will be accepted by CDI. This is something that's never been done before. Everybody's going to be submitting their rates at the same time. But this is a top priority of Commissioner Lara, and the department will move as quickly to review and approve these as we possibly can. So along with the discounts, transparency is another very important aspect of this regulation. For the first time, the new regulation requires the insurance companies to give you your wildfire risk score, and they have to tell you what factors went into determining the score. In the past, this information was considered proprietary, so how can you really take steps to harden your home if you don't even know what the benefits are? So the regulation spells out what mitigation measures are eligible for discounts. Each rate filing will be unique and is reviewed by the rules set under Prop 103 based on that insurance company's own updated loss data. For that reason, it's not going to be across the board, the same discounts from every company. And under the rules passed by voters, every rate filing is published on the Department of Insurance's website, and anyone can see it. So the wildfire risk score or classification must be provided to you at the following times: within 15 days of when you apply for a new policy, at least 45 days before you renew a policy, at least 75 days before you are non-renewed, and within 30 days of when you complete mitigation on your property and request a revised score. And lastly, the regulation gives you the right to appeal your risk score. If you appeal and are not satisfied with the response, please call the Department of Insurance and file a complaint. CDI is California's largest consumer protection agency. Our hotline is manned by compliance officers. If you fill out a request for assistance, these officers can dive into the details of your policy. I do not have that authority. And if you don't get a live person, don't be discouraged. Our hotline has a 2-minute callback average. And if you don't like talking on the phone, you can go online and file a complaint that way and submit a request for assistance as well. And this regulation includes both residential and commercial insurance lines. Now, I don't know if anybody here has any issues with HOAs, but we've been receiving a number of complaints this past year about HOAs throughout the state. We are working to address that. It is on our radar. The property and individual buildings within an HOA will need to be recognized for the mandatory property level mitigation factors listed in the regulation in order to qualify for a discount. And if the HOA would like for the department to review the rate increases received by an HOA, submit a request for assistance so that we can look into it. But this must be submitted by a legal representative of the HOA, as the HOA is the policy holder and not the individual unit owner. An RFA may be completed and submitted once again through our website or by calling our hotline. So if an HOA is located within one of the listed community level designations, they may also qualify for a community level discount. So under this regulation, we expect to see more businesses, homeowners, and communities making investments in wildfire safety, which will create greater community resilience, reduce losses from wildfires, and more insurance coverage for mitigated properties. Please note that the department expects the FAIR Plan to comply with this new regulation and offer discounts for wildfire risk mitigation and structure hardening as well. The FAIR Plan currently offers a 10% discount on policies in a participating FireWise community. And we've heard some consumers have not been made aware of that and are not getting that discount. So if you are insured under the FAIR Plan and you are in a FireWise community, please call them and ask for that. So there are already some insurers offering discounts for both community mitigation and or property or parcel mitigation. You can find the list of insurers currently offering discounts on our website. And the new regulation requires all insurance companies to offer discounts for mitigation. Please visit our website, check on the section halfway down the page called Learn About Our Wildfire Recovery and Readiness Actions. This page contains a list of insurers offering those discounts, a link to the new regulations. We have enormous amount of information on this website. You can look up your insurance company, your insurance agent to make sure that they're insured or that they're licensed still. And you can also check how many, if the company you're using have a number of complaints against them. So you can spend a lot of time on our website. And that's it. One thing I think I like to point out with these regulations, as a homeowner, now you'll be able to see your insurance company is going to have to tell you what kind of discount you get for doing certain steps. So you can make a plan. You can look at your home and say, hey, I can't really afford to get a new roof or to, take down my wood fence and put up an iron fence. But you can you can plan ahead. And you can say, well, maybe I can save some money and do that in 2 years. But this year, hey, let's do the vents because that's pretty cost effective and it's not that, it's not that expensive. So you can make a plan for yourself. But we are really stressing the importance of working as a community. So I hope you are working to become FireWise if you're not already. We also have a grants page on our website that give you some links. I know there's a town, Rancho Marietta, which is south of Sacramento. Last year, they got a $2 million grant, and you're right. So it's out there. It's out there for you. So please take advantage of that if you can.
Wow, we would love to know about those grants. Please provide the link. And before we move on, I would like to apologize to you for not memorizing your exact title.
Oh, that's okay. There's no way I'll be
Sorry
a
about
public
that.
information officer.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Mhm.
Fire Marshal Munson, would you like to continue and advise the community about how to become FireWise and what to expect?
Yes, I would. How you doing? Welcome, everyone. My name is Eric Munson. I am the Deputy Fire Marshal for the City of Richmond Fire Department. I've been with the city for about 27, going on 26 years. So I've had an opportunity to work on the operational side of the fire department, and now I'm in the prevention side of the fire department. So I have somewhat of a extensive history in pertaining to the city. So here tonight, I'd like to give you guys some information in direction of why we feel, the fire department feels, as well as the city, that we need to make sure that we have FireWise communities in our very high severity zones. That's what this is really about. So I'd like to start off with starting off of making sure that everyone knows that's on the call that the reason why we're having this meeting tonight is because you live in a very high severity zone, which has been determined by the state of California Fire Marshal's office. There's several zones throughout the state. They have what we call local response areas and what we call state response areas. Within the local response areas are your communities, which then become the jurisdiction of the city of Richmond. Since the Oakland Hills fire, they created a category of what we call moderate to high to very high severity zones that were established back somewhere between 1993 and 95 after the Oakland Hills fire. The area that you live in has been deemed a very high severity zone throughout the whole time that development was built. Now, in the city, we only have 2 areas that we really designate as severity zones. One is Point Richmond, which I'm not going to talk about because that's not your concern, but I just want you to know that you're not the only area or zone that is in existence in the city. In pertaining to your area, the state of California Fire Marshal's office has been trying to put together what we call maps that indicate the areas and update those maps. They have not been updated in some time. They are going through the process of establishing what I spoke about was the state response areas that they're required to manage, which has nothing to do with us. The local response areas are areas that involve areas such as the parks that we have, which would be Alvarado Park, that is ultimately the jurisdiction of East Bay Regional District. From there, we work with the district that borders our city boundaries, and we make sure that we always try to keep a good level of conversation and continue to fight the fight of mitigation of the wildfire atmospheres that we live in. So really tonight, specifically what Councilmember Bonner wanted me to speak about is home hardening. And home hardening is going to bring us to why we have to do certain things in order to qualify to become a FireWise community. All right, this is what this is about. And we have Mary Beth here that has explained to you why we should become a FireWise community, because it's going to give us the best opportunity to, one, insure your home, two, provide a discount. Because what we're going to find out that communities that are not, and I'm speaking from my point of view, I'm saying this in general, I'm not speaking at all on the behalf of the state or the commissioner. From what I understand, in my point of view, from where I sit, if we want to have a fighting chance and we want to make sure that we have insurance on our properties in these zones, then we're going to have to do everything we can to make sure we meet that obligation. As Mary Beth stated, is that there's no obligation to the state or any control over the state to provide insurance to your area. So we're here today, we're organizing, we want to make sure that we have fire insurance in those areas, and how we go about that is home hardening and defensible space. Now, we've known about defensible space for a long time. We've been a part of it. If you live in those areas, then you would have received a brochure from the Richmond Fire Department annually that indicates what you are responsible for as a homeowner. We all sign all of those long documents when we purchase homes, and sometimes we don't know what we're getting into and what our ultimate response is going to be, or responsibility is going to be in our properties. And that's why we're here to educate you on that. So getting back to why we're talking today. So we issue out, there was an assembly bill that was passed in 2020 that indicated what we had to do in regards to defensible space. And what is defensible space? Let's start with that. So defensible space starts off with making sure that you, from 0 feet to 10 feet, you have essentially nothing combustible or flammable around your property. Okay, that's what you have to have. All right, then we look into going a little bit deeper than that. So someone may ask the question, well, you know, I may have some vegetation around my property. Well, what type of vegetation do you have is always the key. We want to stay away from highly flammable vegetation. We want to use drought vegetation around our properties, if any. And that's really what we need to do in order to start the process of protecting our homes and making sure that we have a FireWise community. That's part of the home hardening effect. All right, so we start with 10 feet. We want to make sure that there's no combustibles, no dry leaves, nothing around your property. Then we move into what we call zone 1. Zone 1 is basically 0 to 30. Now, what I would say in regards to where everyone lives on this phone call in this district here, we are a little bit above the curve, I would say, because most, if not all of our homes have a Class A roof, have a stucco exterior, and have not as much vegetation as you would think based on the requirement of the high rating of the severity zone. All right, we are in an urban environment for the most part, where we have relatively close proximity to our neighbors, which sometimes can pose a problem, but for the most part, we are in relatively safe areas in regards to the standards that exist when we're talking about wildland interface. Just want to let you know that. So within the 30 feet, what we need to do is think about what is around 30 feet from my property. Now, most of us don't have 30 feet between a property, but we may have 30 feet behind our property. And I think that's really what we want to talk about. So if you do happen to have 30 feet around your property, then obviously there's things that you need to make sure that you are preparing your home for. And what I've seen through my experience is that if you give yourself a standing chance, there's a good chance that you will survive. We go through a prioritization when we are evaluating what homes are we going to protect. And if you have a house that's full of vegetation, then more than likely we're going to have to write your house off. That's just the nature of the business. So what we want to do is we want to make sure all of our homes are in a good defensible space, and we provide enough information and enough products that support the home hardening and the FireWise community. Okay, so we talk about what should be in the 30 feet. Well, we like to call it lean, green, and clean. So if you have 30 feet on the side of your home and you have a tree that may not be yours, we want you to limb that tree up anywhere from 6 to 10 feet from the ground, because in most cases, the fire will start from the ground and move up the tree and then go into the tree canopy and then go to another tree. That's part of the problem. But if you have 6 to 10 feet, it's going to be very difficult for that fire unless the flame lengths get that high where it's going to interact with the limbs of the tree. So that's one thing important that you must think about and start to prepare your home for. All right. Most of the time, we're dealing with this behind the homes is where I see a lot of the complaints that I have to serve or issue or deal with. It's the properties that have deep backyards and there may be some trees. So that's something you guys want to think about. Now, everybody's concerned about dead trees and how do you know if a tree is alive? And we all know what the bad actors are. Eucalyptus are some of our worst trees that we can have. And I'm going to say in orders: eucalyptus, pine trees are the two worst trees that you can have on your property. And I know they're planted everywhere. And the reason why is because they are highly flammable trees. Through all the studies we've seen, those are the trees that go up faster, they explode, and then they cause embers to travel to other trees, and then they ignite other trees. So if you have those trees on your property, you should come up with a game plan to remove them. Okay, that's number one in my eyes, right? Now, one other thing that most of my clients in your areas do very well is provide us a spark arrestor on the chimney, which is a requirement of the law. I very seldom ever have to cite people for that in the city of Richmond. Every once in a while, there will be one that is either, damaged or, has just needs to be replaced. But that's not something that I write a lot of violations for. So that has to be in regards to your flame resistant or your flame, your chimney spark arrestor. There must be a minimum of 10 feet from any type of vegetation from that structure. Okay. Most of the time I do see, well, I shouldn't say most of the time. Sometimes I do see vegetation, and that comes from trees being too close. And most of the time it's the neighbor's tree that's close to your chimney. Then I have to instruct the neighbor that they need to remove that distance. Every once in a while, I do come across properties that must remove that 10 feet distance from their existing spark arrestor, all right, or their chimney. So that's one part. So now we've gotten through the 0 to 30. Not most of our properties will fall into zone 2, which is 30 to 100 feet. All right. There are a few properties that do fall into that, but most of them fall into the 0 to 30. But if you are within zone 2, then obviously there's a lot more that you have to do in regards to that. But I don't want to get into too far of that because that's not really our biggest issue. Our biggest issue in our community is 0 to 30. Now, for the properties that don't have neighbors that are backing up to open space, those are the issues that we see are some of the most difficult ones to deal with, whether it's the city of Richmond property, whether it's East Bay Regional Parks, whether it's Contra Costa Fire Protection District, unincorporated areas. That's where we as the city have to do a better job. I'm admitting it. I'm very vocal about it. Councilmember Bonner is being very supportive of us to make sure that we get the right support, because what I also want to tell you is that the City of Richmond Fire Department only does a portion of what's necessary to do what we all need to be done, and that's the whole project. So what we're responsible for the fire department is notification if there is someone out of compliance. From there, if you are, we contact you. If it's a private ownership, you being residential would be private. Now, where we mostly have the difficulty problems is where there's properties that are not under the city, whether it's PG&E property, whether, like I stated, some other entity that owns the property. That's where it gets a little bit more difficult for us to manage. Now, over the years, we have had difficulties in the city itself managing its own property. And like I stated, Councilmember Bonner is going to help me with that now. So I have a partner that I've been seeking for a long time to make sure that happens. Okay, so I just want to make sure we're very clear about that. So one of the other things that we want to make sure that we're planting the right plants, okay, in those spaces. A lot of us, I'm not an arborist. I have no degree in any of that information, but I do know that we have provided information, and I can share that information with you on plants that have been designated that they're considered highly flammable. So I would recommend that you remove any of those plants if you have them around your property, no matter if you have a neighbor that's, within 5 feet of you. You should talk to the neighbor and give them the information. Now, this is something that everybody has to understand. We're all in it together. But if you don't communicate what you know and share your knowledge with your neighbor, no one's going to be successful. This is something that we all have to work together. I'm only one person. I have to rely on other people to do things like the city to maintain the areas that the city owns, right? So once again, it's more informational today about how we can prepare for our FireWise community. So now I want to go into what makes a home FireWise. Home hardening. Home hardening is something that we have been talking about for years. Home hardening is something that all of your homes were built with. It's under the fire code, which is 7A. When you look in the fire code, it depicts what requirements are necessary when building developments, building homes, if your property is compliant to the new code requirements. And I spoke a little bit about Point Richmond. So Point Richmond is unique because it's non-conforming. They don't meet any of the criteria, but they're still under the very high severity zone. So I'm just going to leave it at that. So let's start talking about your homes particularly. All right. So what deems a hard home, a FireWise hard home environment? One, let's start with the roof. Most important, you must have a Class A roof. And if anybody doesn't know what a Class A roof is, it's essentially a composite roof that's made out of a material that is non-combustible, non-flammable. All right. Now, most of your properties in your areas have those. I have not seen a wood-shake roof in any of the areas in some time. So we're okay at that level. The next part is stucco. Stucco is a hard, like concrete surface that allows the fire not to burn the stucco. Most of the homes in our environment are that. So we're already ahead of the curve. If you have wood siding or any type of siding on your home, that would pose a problem. Sidings are not something that you want on your property, whether it's a vinyl siding or some type of wood siding, right? So we want to get away from those. So when your area was built, it was built to have a somewhat of a 7A hard homing effect, right? it wasn't very knowledgeable at the time of what we were doing, but we were still building homes that we knew that couldn't have wood surfaces. Now, so we've taken care of the roof, we've taken care of the exterior of the structure. Let's start talking about the gutters. The gutters are something important because leaves fall in the gutters. What I would advise, if you have the capabilities, and there are grants out there, there are things that you can do. I know we have an older population in that area, so there are opportunities for seniors to get discounts on applying some of these home hardening features, even what Mary Beth was speaking about. So in regards to the gutters, it's not a good idea to be climbing a ladder trying to clean your gutters when you're my age, at the age I'm at. So I wouldn't advise it for anybody above my age. And I'm over 55, I will say that. So that's one thing. So what I would suggest is that you look into providing a way that you can conceal your gutters from leaves going inside of it, because it's very hard to clean the gutters when you have a 2-story home. It's very difficult. So that's one thing that's part of the home hardening complement of items that you should try to do at your property. It's one of the cheapest things to do, but it's also one of the things that you can do that is going to give you a better chance than your neighbor. Now, the other things, we don't have to really worry about single pane windows. We don't have those in most of your homes, so your windows are fine. The other things that are concerns are the vents. You have natural vents inside your roof line. There are products out there that do not allow embers to enter the vent space. All right, so that's something else that you can do to protect your home in regards to embers going inside of your attic space and then catching your insulation on fire and then causing you to have an attic fire. We do see those happening in those areas that do not have those types of components built into their structures. All right, so now the other part, which everybody has a problem with, decks. All right, these are the decks that are located outside your home that majority of them are made out of wood. Not so good anymore, not so good. If you are in the process of replacing your deck, then you must look at building a composite type structure. I know it costs more, but there's a trade-off. It doesn't burn. It lasts 20 times longer than wood. There's not much maintenance. I know that over the years, the technology has improved greatly and the cost has gone down. So these are all items that you are required by law to do. Now, I will tell you that I don't have the jurisdiction ability to go in your backyard without your approval. So when I'm doing these inspections that we do every year to 4,000 of our residents, we do what we call drive-bys because the law does not allow us to go on your property. I can only see it from the street side, and I can only place the violation in a place that is in an open space. I can't put it in your mailbox. I can't do certain things by law, right? So I just want to make sure you guys understand that. So if you do come across being cited for a violation, then it will explain what you're in violation of, and then you will have a certain amount of time to do what the violation is stating, right? I will be honest with you. We have not done a very good job of doing enforcement, okay, because of a lack of employees in my division. But I would like to say that over the last few months, we have now been in a position where we're going to be able to hire. And I have to thank Councilmember Bana, even if I don't know she had anything to do with it, but I would have to thank her personally for making it possible for us to become fully staffed to better suit the needs of our customers and our tax base. So that's that. Thank you. So once again, we want to get back into home hardening. Decks are a problem. The other problem that we find, fencing. Mary Beth spoke about fencing. We now have had enough studies to say that wood fencing is not the best thing in very high severity zones. What it does is it propagates the fire from place to place. So literally, if an ember falls on fencing that may be starting to decay, it's going to start a fire. And the next thing you know, we have fire blocks and blocks away from where the fire started. So if you're thinking about replacing fencing, I know that technology has not allowed us to do plastic fencing yet, but I would say that metal fencing is by far the best. There are some other products out there that, yeah, they're not as decorative as you may like. They may not provide as much privacy as you like, but what would you prefer to have? A home that's defensible or a home that's not? So that's up to you. I'm not here to tell you that you have to do it at this point. But what I will now move into, what we're doing in the fire department, which we're going to be mandated to do, is come up with a fuel mitigation exterior hazard abatement ordinance. Now, since when I spoke about since 1993 to 95, when we were mandated to come up with what we call the very high severity zones, there was a lot of information in what I spoke about that already existed in that ordinance. That ordinance is very old. We are now, since then, we've come up with a Contra Costa Community Wildfire Protection Plan, which we've been working on, and it's still in it's in a draft state. It will be formalized, but we can still use it today as a document. We use that, but the problem is that the ordinance that I'm going to create is going to give me what I call more teeth in order to do what we need to do to make sure that we can become a FireWise community. So those are some of the things that I wanted to talk about. I can get into more specifics about each of the ordinances, each of the protection plans, and so on and so on. But before I transition into that, I wanted to say there are some opportunities because we do have these zones that PG&E will give you assistance if you need medical devices that you have to have on. There's some things that can work to your advantage if you live in those zones. So if there's some information that you want to know a little bit about that, I can assist with that in regards to the website that's listed for PG&E. Not sure of anything. Those are all, HIPAA rules that you can only know if you need any of those types of services. But I thought it'd be very good to speak about those as we spoke. So at this point, I just want to kind of leave it open to any questions and possible answers that I can give you. If I'm not able to answer your question today, I will take the note and then I will respond back through Councilmember Bana, and then she will be able to help you with that. So I think at this point I've spoken enough. I think it's time to open up the floor and see if we have any questions.
Thank you very much. Before we move on to questions, I just wanted to thank you very much for everything that the fire department does and that you do. And I just noticed that now we do have a wildfire prevention division. The budget season is coming, so I'm going to ask you to please submit the budget, and I'm going to ask everyone here to please vocal at the city council meetings, at the community budget meetings, raise the issue. We have many residents who cannot afford actually the fuel reduction. We need some help from the city. I mean, it's a city issue. If they cannot do it, it's not just a personal issue. The city need to have matching grant or something. And Mary Beth, if you could please provide the link to the grant program that you had mentioned, we appreciate it. With that, we can go to questions. Pam, please, and then Marilyn.
I have two, I hope, pretty simple questions. The first one is there a spray that can go over wood to make it fireproof? I saw a program years ago that some engineer saved his house with some of these techniques.
Question one. So there are, well, I'll tell you this. So So when you see a wildfire happening and you see the planes flying above and you see what we call retardant being sprayed all over, they lay out this red type of retardant that essentially encapsulates the fuel and does not allow it to burn. So yes, there is a material. What I don't know if there's a material that you can purchase for that purpose. That I do not know. But once again, if that was something that you wanted to apply to your wooden fence, because that's what I'm assuming that you would want to do it for, there may be a product out there. I'm not familiar with it, but that's something that that I'm not sure that it would really help, to be honest with you. Okay, there's a lot of things that are out there that people are doing, taking advantage of essentially what this crisis is. And I'm not sure that that's a product that I have ever heard about. I do, I represented the Fire Prevention Officers Association, and I don't ever remember going and being a part of any talk group that we really stood behind a spray-on product that was it's money and gold. So I'm just telling you, Ms. Morris, based on my experience, there may be a product out there. It's not something that I'm endorsing. I'm not saying that there's something that you may want to look into, but that's not something that we're talking about in the fire service as something that can be applied to the homeowner's home or to, structures or fences.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Marilyn,
I have a second question.
Pam, can we come back to you? I'm
Sure.
gonna get the one question from everyone and come back. We have enough time. We have 15 minutes. We'll get back to you. Marilyn.
Yeah, we'll get the questions answered. No question. No problem.
Thank you.
If I can just chime in for a second, there are products out there, gels that you do apply on the houses. You can buy them in pretty sizable containers and spray them on your house. And in LA, they've been really very incredibly effective. I have looked into them and thinking, oh boy, you've got to apply it within a certain length of time before a fire. You can't just apply them and walk away. So I don't know how effective they are in that regard, but there are products out there. I'm more concerned about other things. If I could go on to my question to be selfish about it. I've had my homeowner's insurance canceled a couple of times.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but you need to raise your hand, get in line. It was Marilyn's time and then Cliff and then.
Oh, excuse me. I didn't realize you
Yeah,
were.
you'll be
Okay,
after
I
Cliff,
will-
but
who's
Marilyn
the-
disappeared, so.
Okay, hand raising. I don't see
See,
it.
you might have pushed the wrong button. So Cliff, would you like to ask your question? Stu, we'll get back to you.
Okay,
Thank you.
waiting for Cliff. Yes.
Cliff, are you there? Okay, Stu, I think,
Sorry, I
go
unmuted.
ahead.
I was muted. Right. I'm wondering when we're going to see a list of rules that we need to follow, and when we're going to see information about the various products we might need. Now, I realize this might involve manufacturers and government not wanting to promote one product over another and so on. But as a consumer, for example, a fencing system, might be difficult to find something, and then you might pick something and turns out there was something better elsewhere. So I think you've got the gist of what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Cliff.
Yeah. So in regards to, no, I'm not in a position to recommend products. That's not what the city allows me to do. And as well as not refer you to someone to do a service. So I just want to put that out there. I'm not in a position to do that. The city refrains from me able to do that. But I can always point you in the direction to be able to go to sites, but I just can't tell you and give you what we would require you to do. We're not going to be requiring products from the fire marshal's office. What we will be doing is following the state guidelines that will tell us what we should do. We are not going to do anything that is going to be outside the state's guidelines, but we can be a little bit more what I would consider restrictive in certain ideas and certain things that we want to make sure based on our community. The state allows us to do that. The law allows us to do that. What we have taken on is, to be fair to the community, is we want to make sure that we are covering the minimum standards, the minimum standard. Everybody else, you know, in regards to property, everyone has different financial needs, as Councilmember Bonner spoke about. So the city is never going to be in a position that we're going to enforce you to do something other than the minimum standard. There is occasion that we may have to, like I will do, is create an ordinance to give me a little bit more teeth than the state allows. That's what we will be doing. So in regards to products, there are plenty of products out there. And this is what FireWise and your council can help you with, is finding what products are going to suit the needs of your community, because all the communities are different. So that's something that obviously we are going to be a support mechanism for the council, meaning the FireWise Council. So we will be here and we will give you recommendations, but really it's going to be up to the council to dictate what the neighborhood is going to be doing other than the minimum standards that the city is going to require. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Marilyn?
Hold on a second. That I'll lower my hand now that I've started.
Okay.
Yeah, folks, I'm putting in some references to help you do your research in the chat. Just want to get that out there. I have a question for you, Mr. Munson. I didn't get your, is it Deputy Chief?
Deputy Fire Marshal. Yes, ma'am.
Deputy Fire Marshal. I'm sorry, I get tripped by that. One of the things that totally dismayed me is when I finally found the recently updated fire code ordinance. And I was a little bit surprised because it used an older definition that the state is in fact planning to change, but it requires a legislative change. However, the city had the option to use a higher protective ordinance. And they are only applying the state standards, fire code, and the chapter 7A, the building code for the WUI, to very high fire hazard areas. And our whole area is just as octopusy as the limits of city of Richmond in terms of very high and high fire zone mapping. And it's ridiculous because of course the embers really don't care. And I had assumed that the city would have adopted the state standard, which actually goes from moderate, high, and very high. Can you explain to me why they didn't choose the more protective standard? Did they just do boilerplate without referring?
Well, I can't speak about exactly why the city chose in 1993 to 1995 in regards to the ordinance. This was really basically an effect that had to be done from the Oakland Hills fire. And at that point, and please don't hold me to this, because like I said, I was not in my position. I was I got hired in the early 90s, but we'll get back to this. So I would say at the time, the state didn't even recognize anything else besides very high, from what I understand. Okay. Now, over the years, we've gone from what we consider very high to moderate. All right. And what I will tell you, though, is that your area is not going to be changed, in my view. We are not going to change yours from a very high to a high or to a moderate. You meet all of the criteria for very high, so it's not going to change. I don't think that the state is going to allow that to happen because you have too much open space behind your area. You have too much vegetation that would cause you to stay where you are. Now, let's get back into, I can give you a good example of why I believe Point Richmond will change, because they fell under, let's say there's 5 criterias that exist to deem you as a severity zone. At the time, Point Richmond really only was checking the boxes of 3. They didn't meet all of the criteria, but because it was so new and essentially it's non-conforming, what I mean is that none of the areas in Point Richmond conform to any laws that exist, because the streets are too narrow, the hills are very hilly, the homes are very close. Every home there is more than likely made out of wood siding and things of that. So we don't really want to get into that area of the district. I essentially would have more problems there in regards to building construction because it's all non-conforming than I would in your area. And that's what I tried to define earlier in the conversation. So what I think is going to happen is that the state will say, no, we need to keep your area as it stands, and you'll have the possibility to reach out to your constituents, your customers, and find out if there's a possibility of lowering the standard in Point Richmond, because we don't have a huge amount of vegetation. We don't have a huge amount of open space. We have other issues that make it a problem, like the topographical, like the narrow of the streets, the homes being built too close to one another. Those are none of the issues that we have in your area. They don't comply to anything under 7A. Only thing that we enforce is new construction in there. So if the new home is built, yes, they have to conform to 7A all the way to the top. There's no excuse. And a lot of times that is a problem for that area because they can't meet the criteria. So you see a home that's made out of wood next door, and the next home, the house is almost made out of steel, because that's what it has to take in order to meet some of the challenges. So then Mary Beth can give you an opportunity to get your insurance. All right. Yes, ma'am. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you very much. Stu, it's your
Wait, I'm sorry, Sohaila, just to follow up. The
Go ahead.
problem is in 2021, the mapping somehow changed and suddenly I'm across the street from the very high wildfire zone. And yeah, a whole bunch of El Sobrante Valley now is high, not very high. And the thing that gets me is the state applies chapter 7A to very high, high, and moderate. But the city of Richmond passed an ordinance that only applies to very high. And I have a lot of concern because the embers really don't care in El Sobrante Valley where they're going. So that's actually what my point was. But what you said was very interesting. I do appreciate that.
Yeah, and just before we move on, yes. So no, at the point when we adopted that, the state had not come out with, like I stated, the moderate or the high. So all we knew was very high. So like I stated, we will be circling back around and we will be clarifying that information in regards to that. Now, the thing about it is this: if you're in a zone, it doesn't matter if you're across the street or not. Exactly. If your neighbor is not making sure his home is defensible, you don't have a standing chance if you're 5 blocks away. So, like I said, this is a community thing. That's why we have to help our neighbors that may not be able to meet the criteria of what they're faced with, right? So in regards to that, I cannot say anything more until the state comes out with the defined maps that are going to indicate exactly what it is, and they say it's coming. Like I stated, they have started the state response areas. They're moving towards the local response areas. When the local response areas are done, then I will get my maps, and at that point, I will be working with the city to improve and update the information. At this point, I've been on hold for 5 years. They have been promising these maps for 5 years. And the reason why they weren't able to meet the timetable is because we have had so many large fires over this last 5 years that they didn't have time to do anything but put out fires.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Stu, if you're still here, it's your time to ask your question, please. Stu?
I'm trying to, here we go. Sorry. I don't know. There's way too much going on. We have insurance, we have home hardening. There's a lot of subjects for one night, and I don't know if we're able to cover them at all, but I live in the Alvaro Park area and have removed all the vegetation around my house. When I moved into Bukes and Pines, I took immediately out. This is 30 years ago. But I can't do anything about the park behind me.
Right.
That's the source of fire. We wouldn't even have a discussion if indeed that was handled. I wouldn't even be here. So my point is that how do we possibly convince our insurance companies? Again, I could be canceled any minute. Travelers is being canceled, or is canceling a whole bunch of places in the Oakland Hills right now. We could be next. Nonetheless, how do we do that? I've already hardened everything about my house. The only thing I haven't done is spray stucco on the side yet. So, which I may be doing, or hardy board or something. So, what do you suggest? I'd love to have you come out and do an inspection. You know, the county's come out and done inspections, and they go on the street, and actually some things happen. I was shocked. They actually took some vegetation away from the roadsides and stuff. But they were very not very terribly clear or effective when it came to the house or my yard. It was more about the area, which is okay. But so the area really is embodied by the park district's proximity, and it's the number of flammable plants that it has. So that's the big story here. So
Actually,
to their credit, they have taken a number of things out. They did a couple of years ago, which was very good after many years of our having a council with Jean Joy's office and stuff, and they did work. So, and they're removing more now this year. So
they gave us a tour of that area, and they've done a great job actually. But is your question for Mary Beth regarding the insurance when you do your best in your home, but your neighbors like agencies create the hazard? Mary Beth, do you have an answer for that?
That's the first time I've heard of that. I'm sure it's happening all over the state, now that you bring it up.
yeah,
The only thing you can do is harden your own home, but I believe that's going to be an issue for your town, but I will take that back to our group and bring that up to them.
Okay.
Well, I've already carried the clipboards up and down on the street years ago to get the FireWise or Dabla Fire Safe Council, that sort of thing. And we submitted all the forms and nothing ever happened. So I don't know what to do, but I'd love to be able to maybe march again and maybe you could have a community-wide effort. The houses up here are very different. There's no subdivision, nothing like that here. So they're all different.
I'm not familiar with your area. Do you have a lot, or do you have a lot of hills?
Yep.
I was at a fair, a fire prep fair in San Mateo County a couple of months ago. And they found that, how fire rushes up hills, right?
Yep.
That can affect your fire risk score right there. But they found that just putting a small retaining wall on the hill, a little bit below your property, or if you have a deck hanging over just before the deck, that when the fire rushes up, that like 3-foot retaining wall can divert the flames. And to see that on film was pretty amazing. And that's pretty cheap,
Thank you.
But,
And I wanted to add also, Stu, that Joyce is trying to coordinate the efforts for FireWise groups in the community and inspection with the fire department or county inspectors. So if you would like, I can put you in touch with her. Do we encourage so she, And also Mark here is from the FireWise community in Orinda. We had, meetings with her before. I have a question for Mary Beth. Would you like to share your email address, or if questions come
Oh,
up,
sure.
would you like me to pass them on to you?
No, that's fine. I'll share my
Yeah,
email. address.
the same with you, Deputy Fire Marshal Munson, if you would like to put your email, or you don't have to, I can forward them. I just wanted to be clear about that. Oreen, you had a question. It's your turn.
Yeah, let me just speak one, Councilmember Vana. Yes, if you can provide my contact information to your group, I think that would be the best way we handle it. And then from there, I can work with the community to help answer any questions or give them any direction. And then we can always come back together and speak about what we spoke about.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Because when I send the link to the recording, I'll be sending your email addresses if you permit me.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Oreen, are you here? Would you like to share your question? She had a question.
Yes,
Go ahead.
a couple of observations that'll be quick, and then my question will be for Ashley, Ms. Bykowsky. So I just want to say that I started my fire safe journey after the Santa Rosa fires, and Fire Safe Marin across the bay from us has been miles ahead of our county as far as responding to the issues. And they, I met the company called Ember at there, and I have had, for $250, they'll come and they'll do all of your assessments and then hook you up with very good vendors. I've had the spark arresters put in my vents, and I've just been slowly, as time and money permits, working through all the issues that my house has. So that's very exciting. So that's it. Fire Safe Marin has got a great template for all of us who are looking around for things to do. And then Ember is a great resource for a vendor. My question again for Ms. Bykowsky is, my problem currently is that I have an HOA that is, more concerned about what color our houses are than doing anything much to fix our fires, our fire risks. And so one of the things is that they mandate wooden fences. And just like they tried to mandate that I couldn't put solar on my roof. Well, it turns out there's a state law that prohibits them from doing that, from refusing me to put a solar on my roof. And so I was wondering if anybody has looked at the legislation for that, so that HOAs may not prohibit a legitimate fire safety activity. That's my question.
Okay, I haven't heard of that either, so I'll bring that also back to the regulations group.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
and-
Mrs. Pryor. Yeah,
Mhm.
Mrs. Pryor, I think to make a comment about that, I think, one thing how you should try to approach this is that, your language in your bylaws is just old. And that's part of it in regards to the fencing. In regards to the wood fencing, this is all new information that has been extracted through a lot of lost lives and a lot of fires that we've had. In the past, yes, we had no idea that wood fences would essentially cause more fires. So now that we know this, there's been studies to indicate to us that if you are replacing your fence, then you may want to look at using a different material than something that's combustible. So I would say that you should bring the information, bring the knowledge to your HOA board. As you should know, the city has no jurisdiction over your HOA. I deal with a lot of that because we have several HOAs within the city of Richmond, and it can be very difficult to deal with sometimes. You have to find someone within your organization, your HOA, that understands and will help you fight the fight. And then you have to get on the board and make yourself present, so then you can change the direction of the philosophy of what people think and start preparing themselves for the reality of what they live in, and not looking at a cosmetic issue of painting a building. Not to say you shouldn't maintain your paint exterior, but I think you are a person taking your time out tonight. You should provide them as much information and find someone that thinks like you do, and start to build that continuity with those individuals. So then you can obtain what you need to do to protect your environment.
Chief Munson, if we can talk about whether the city should have an ordinance saying that it should not be mandated by the HOA, things that, you know, are fire risks.
Well, lucky for me, I don't have any HOAs that are in a very high severity zone, so we're safe. I don't
Actually,
have to
they
deal with
are.
that.
Carriage Hills are.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to tell you
Which
that
one?
Carriage
Hill.
I'm
Carriage Hills
Carriage
has an
Hill
HOA
South, and
now. Ah,
we've had it since the beginning.
Yep.
Since the
really?
beginning. And
Well,
I've been talking to my HOA since the Santa Rosa fire, because my dear friend showed up on my porch at 3 in the morning because their house had burned down in Santa Rosa. And
oh,
that was part of the reason that Santa Rosa was so bad, because they had wooden fences.
We
well, yeah.
also have.
It was a major cause. So this is, in my book, this is nothing new. I feel like I've been standing and screaming on the street corner, and that's why I'm currently involved. Sahela has provided me a lovely, she's the one that actually latched me into all of our FireWise activities, and I'm in the process of trying to get my neighborhood awake and doing FireWise activities. So yeah, it's an uphill battle, but it's, thankfully, actually, this insurance issue will probably drive it. So I hate to see it come to legislation, but if that's what it takes to make everybody do it, then that's what we have to do.
Yeah,
and we're ready.
and
I appreciate
Go
you
ahead.
so much for Deputy Chief Munson. I appreciate you so much for, clearly you've also been, standing in the middle of the street and making sure that people understand. So I appreciate you very much.
Yeah, and I apologize for not knowing that Carriage Hill South is an HOA. I guess the reason why is because I haven't had any HOA problems with them. So that's a good thing. Other than what you're stating, and I think it's more of an education thing that you need to make your people aware of, that this is a problem. They live in a very high severity zone, and it's not going to change. So if they don't think that fences will cause issues, they will if we do have a fire there. But like I said, I did point out that, most of the area in South is, within the home hardening type of components that we're looking for. So like I said, you have a fighting chance. And if fences are the only problem in vegetation, then at least if we take care of the vegetation, we won't have any fires. So my main thing is that we get together, we mitigate the vegetation, we control what we plant, and at that point, our homes will be hard homing. And then from there, we'll have a FireWise community, and then we can always have gatherings to spread the word to other areas.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Alan, you have a question about insurance? Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess just sort of, I had earlier said that we had installed a gas shutoff valve, earthquake gas shutoff valve. And when I had talked to the insurance company, as I said, I think at the very beginning, maybe everybody didn't hear it, but instead of giving me a discount, they came back and said, well, actually, we show that it should have been a part of your policy all along, which I think leads everybody to the question of, contacting your insurance company about what you can or should do to your home. It's almost like it's about like inviting you, Munson, into our backyard to check everything out. Everybody wants to get it done, but nobody wants to be, how do you say, have their policy taken out or have things pushed on them. So when there's 20% discount that FireWise communities can start to have. But those rules can change. If all of a sudden a FireWise community has to have their fencing taken out, then there goes the discount. And I did see in that, I just not to drone on, but you had in the slide you put in earlier, understandably a part of this is the viability of the insurance industry. So we're at this place here where nobody wants to get cut, but nobody wants to see the insurance companies go out. So I almost feels like, we're not quite sure what to do, who wants to contact, after my insurance company said that to me, it's almost like, boy, I don't think I'll ever contact them again about discounts, because they could look at me and say, oh, well, let's go out and have a look at your place. You know what I mean? That's what was a little disturbing at the end of the day. That was what I was a little bit left with. That's
You
it.
know, and I've been going to some local assistance centers after the floods and such. And some people who have had some problems due to the wildfires out, I'm in El Dorado County, out by my county. They have been hurt by the floods and they don't even want to call their insurance company and make a claim because they're afraid they're going to get dropped entirely. So it is a problem. It breaks my heart to talk to people that have been affected with two different disasters, really. But at the same time, like you said, we need to have insurance companies because they're there, but our world has changed. I mean, look what all around the country, right? Things are happening, tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, fires. So we have to do what we can. We have to each be responsible. And it's hard to tear down your trees, right? And a sir that lives next to the park, I mean, you wanted to live next to that park, right? At one point, because it was probably beautiful. So, you know, the whole world is a little bit different now. So we just have to all be responsible and work together. And we're trying to get the insurance companies. I mean, they understand there's a problem. It's their business too. They want to stay in business. So it's you know, all of us have to, like I said, work together and do the best we can. We're trying. The department's trying its best.
So I'd just like to make one statement in regards to the gas shutoff. So I think why they suspected that you should have already had one because we're in an earthquake zone, right? The FireWise communities, none of that has anything to do with the gas shutoff valve in one aspect. The gas shutoff valve is intended when the ground shakes, it moves the pipe and there's a level inside of that device and it shuts it off. In regards to wildland fires, we do see if a home burns down to the ground and it ruptures the gas line, that is possible. So of course, would I encourage you to have that device placed on your gas meter? Yes, but it's not something that I am going to require you do. It's not going to be a state requirement. It's not going to be a local requirement. What we do now is a requirement is that the code, the fire code and the building code requires you to have that device installed when you build a new home. But there's nothing to do or nothing to say about that unless you do what we would consider a tenant improvement to your property and you go 50% over. There may be some language that says if you do 51% of a tenant improvement, now you have to bring it up to code, and that may be a device that you have to install. You said it's $300. I think that's cheap money when you're talking about a safety device in my eyes. So would I recommend it personally? Absolutely. But as a fire code official, I cannot say that that's going to be a requirement in any of our zones at this point. There's not been any talk about that. But on a new home, if we build a new development, it will definitely be required.
Thank you. We can talk offline about a new ordinance I'm planning to introduce in the city about remodeling or quickly, if the gas shut-off valve turns shut off, does PG&E have to come and turn it on, or we can do it ourselves? After
Good question. Good question. So the utility.
What I found on the valve is that it's easy to reset.
Oh, okay.
And then the only thing is you have to probably come in and light your pilot on your water heater.
Okay.
Yes.
Most furnaces, if they're gas or electronic, so that's not an issue.
Yes.
That's what I found.
Yeah, that is accurate. I would tell you that if you called PG&E, they would not advise it. I will tell you that. They will advise you only to call them and request one of their technicians to come out and reset all of your devices. So obviously, you know, during a crisis, there's not going to be anybody to do that. And let's say that there is an earthquake and it trips the valve and you're sitting there and now you can't, you know, heat your home and it's cold outside. Well, I'm not going to tell you not to go do that, but I'm going to tell you that the PG&E utility is going to recommend that you don't do that. So I get those questions a lot. That's how I understand the law.
Thank you. We are over the time. We usually keep it at 1 hour. Is it okay to go a few more minutes and get a few more questions for both of you, guest speakers? And I thank you both very much for staying over time. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Sure.
Before I get other questions, quick clarification from you. You talked about 10 feet around the house. It used to be 5 feet. Has it changed?
No, it's 10 feet. That's it's 10 feet that we want to make sure that you have no vegetation, no dry limbs at all. That's going to give you your best opportunity. I know there was talk about the 0 to 5, but the new laws coming out are going to be in what I've been proposing or suggesting or not really enforcing a lot, but we do have it in the ordinance or the Assembly Bill 3074 that indicates 10 feet.
Okay, thank you. And Mary Beth, I have a question for you. Is there a possibility that in the future, the government provides a wildfire insurance similar to flood insurance, or regular home policy is for like regular fires and other things, and there's a blanket coverage of wildfire insurance?
There may have been talk about that, but I can't really speak to that.
Could you take it up to the commissioner?
Yes.
As a request from the committee, because it's a huge problem. It's a huge burden. I mean, it has just had changed everything, you know, the equation has changed. Wildfire is like flood, it's a fact of life. Okay. Thank you everyone for your patience. Pam and then Marilyn. You're muted, Pam, unmute, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask the Marshal, the inspector, can you publish your checklist? I understand that you don't go into the yards and check, you do the drive-by, but we're in the yard. And if we want to comply, what is the checklist that you use? You mentioned single pane windows. And I actually do have some single pane windows. You mentioned a wood deck, you mentioned wood siding. So is there a list of the things that we are not in compliance if we have, so we can start addressing those?
Yeah, so if you go to the City of Richmond website, the fire department under fire prevention, you look under wildfire, there is some links and documentation that will assist you in answering those questions.
So I'm interested in your checklist, like your clipboard, the clipboard that you take out.
That's there. The information that we use is the same information that we will cite you with that has been published on our website through a brochure that we send out to all 4,000 individuals, property owners that live in the very high severity zone. So you should be receiving that documentation every year. Now, I do get a lot that come back, but for the most part, we go to the tax roll and we send them out under the registered owner of the property. And it's normally a trifold piece of paper that we send out with your name on it that indicates what your requirements will be and what we suggest that you should do. Now, in regards to specific items when you're talking about home hardening, that's something that I could provide for you. It's going to be right now. That information is in our plan, our Contra Costa Wildland Protection Plan. That specific information I was speaking about is in that document, and that document is posted on our website. That's a link. It's about 66 pages that you need to go through, but it indicates exactly what I was speaking about in regards to home hardening.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn.
Mine's quick. I just want people to know there are lots of great resources in the chat. Unfortunately, some people have left, so they didn't get to hear that. And you can download these, their web links and their phone contacts and stuff like that. So please, before we end the meeting, save your chat because there's a lot of good stuff. And Pam, I just gave you a few places to go right away. For
Okay, or if
checklists.
you email them, I'll share them with the community. Thank you. Cliff, you get the last question.
Thank you. Fire Marshal Munson, you said that this information is all available on the website, including your checklist for the high fire danger zone. But I don't want you to think I'm being tricky with you, but didn't you say that you don't really know where that fire zone is or where it's going to be, or the map's not available or something? I'm a bit mystified about this.
No, sir. What I stated is that the information, the documents are on the website. What I was stating is that the State of California Fire Marshal's Office that's going to designate the maps, they have not been released yet. They're updating the maps. They started off with the state response areas, which we call SRA areas, and then they're going to move to the local response areas that fall within our jurisdiction. Once that's done, at that point, I will be notified by the state if there's a change in my jurisdiction on my rating. Right now, the city of Richmond is under a very high severity zone when it comes to where you live in Point Richmond. Those are the two areas that that the state has designated as a very high severity zone. I don't think that there's going to be a change in the designation of your area based on 5 components that the state uses to define your area. I do think there may be a change of the area in Point Richmond, but here nor there, that doesn't concern you at all because that's at the other end of the city. I hope that answered your question. Is there anything else, sir?
No, I was just thinking, but no, that's fine. Thank you very much. And Sahalia, thank you for allowing me the last question.
Of course.
So before I leave, Councilmember Bonner, I wanted to say one thing. One thing that what we have to remember as well, which will make us a FireWise community, is preparation. Ready, set, go. If we're not ready, set to go when we need to, then we are not going to be a FireWise community. So once again, on the website, there is information that will give you what you need to prepare what we call a go kit, a GOKIT. So in that, it specifies what types of requirements or items that you may need in case you do have to vacate your property. So that's one other thing that I'd like to make sure we close with, is that you need to be prepared and you need to leave early. You need to make sure that you're ready, set to go, and you need to make sure that all of your animals, your pets, or any of that is prepared to go if we say go. What Councilmember Bonner and the fire department are doing is we're creating routes that we will not necessarily share, but we will know that she may know about. And it's not that we're hiding anything, and we can get a little bit more into that conversation later, because I'm sure we'll have a follow-up meeting to talk more about what we're talking today. This is not going to be the last time that you're going to hear from me or from Councilmember Bonner on this subject. You know, I'm going to provide as much information as I get it to the council. That way you guys can be informed. We're going to continue to work together. But to get back to it, is that we all have to work together to make sure that we are all compliant of what we're living in. It goes back to, you know, we've created earthquake preparedness through CERT, and we have individuals that get together within their communities and make sure that we take care of Miss Smith that may be, you know, ambulatory and things of that sort. That's all important. It's not just being aware of yourself, but also being aware of your neighbors. Okay. So once again, if you have someone that may need some assistance, then you want to start working with them and get together and provide that either information to the police department or the fire department, as well as, your utility company, like I spoke about. Some of these things can be done. So we know that if we have an individual in a certain area, we may need to provide additional care. We want to know about that. And the only way that's going to happen is if you, the neighborhood, get together and come together and make it known that we have certain issues within your development that we may need to take care of first. I spoke about, being prepared to leave. So we took the time out to sit down and tabletop a example of if we have something that goes on in your environment, what we are going to do. We've taken the time to do that. We have not published it. We will not publish it because we cannot publish it because we don't know what the fire is going to dictate. What we do know is we're going to have several options and be prepared. And we're going to work with the police department, public works, and we're going to work with the community, Nixle, and all of these other advantages that we have now, technology, to prepare and get going and get us safe out of the environment and making sure that we are doing the best we can to get in to protect what's left, if there is anything, as well as make sure that we get occupants out as best we can.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Mary Beth, would you like to add anything?
Yes, in the same vein, make sure everybody has done a home inventory of their houses. Have you taken your smartphone, go into every room, open all the drawers and the closets and take a photo of everything, because if you have a total loss, you only have so many months to record what you've lost and you're in shock. You don't remember everything that was in your house. Your home may be valued up to a certain amount, but if you don't have proof that amount of items was in your home, you're not going to get that full coverage. So please do that.
Interesting. Thank you very much. And we hope to have you back maybe mid-May or towards end of May. When is a good time by which how insurance companies are doing it?
I think maybe later in the summer. I don't know how long it's going to take to get all of these rates, passed through. And then also we thought, we're asking all these questions because it's all new for all of us. So say your homeowner's insurance is due to be renewed in February. And if the new rates come out in June, you won't get that new rate until February.
Say it again.
Okay, just so you're aware. Okay, so the rates are going to come out. Say they come out next month, your rate for your home. But if your homeowner's policy isn't due to be renewed for another 6 months, you're going to have to wait that 6 months to get the new rate.
Oh, to get the discount.
Right. It's not going to be automatic, right, for everybody.
I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's stay in touch and we'll have you over again towards end of summer.
Okay.
And have you here more often, Deputy Fire Marshal Munson, and we'll talk more offline too. Thank you both very much. I really sincerely appreciate your coming tonight, both of you, and especially staying half an hour over time. Really appreciate your support of the community's efforts and all the information and everything. And we promise next time it's going to be only 1 hour.
Stay safe.
Thank you very much and have a good evening, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yes, have a safe evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.